What's going on, guys? So I am back at the Canadian Tire parking lot, but this time I am really happy because I finally fixed this issue. And instead of making a really long video, I just kind of wanted to make a quick short summary because I know a lot of people are kind of following this build and maybe they're trying some of the stuff that I'm trying and maybe they're running into the same issue. So I just wanted to make a quick video. The last video I posted was about the tires, and we had a couple issues with those, so I want to mention that as well. I also want to mention some stuff regarding fuel and the coil pack. So let's get to it. So first off, we'll start where we left off, which was the tires. So if you haven't seen the last video, I put a Firehawk Indy 500 and I put a 255 4018, and this was actually a mistake. So you know, not only is it a shorter tire, but it's actually it's out of spec. So what I mean by that is on the traction control systems, they are measuring a ABS ring gear on the inside, and on the fronts they're using a wheel speed sensor. So if these two sensors are rotating at a different speed, the car thinks that it's slipping and it's going to throw a traction control light, which on our cars is a P1720, and it might also throw some ABS, VDC, and TCS slip lights. So after chasing my tail on this forever, I put the right wheels on it and that issue went away. But during that, I also had some fuel issues where it had, so I've got a fuel pressure gauge, which as you can tell, it is still at 40, it means that the system has been primed. So when you turn the key on, the fuel pump primes the fuel rail, and then you fire up the car and everything works great, and you turn the car off and it's supposed to say at 40 psi. So sorry, a bunch of people. So anyways, when me and my friend are out testing these new tires and we're street racing, he also noticed that I would turn the key off and the fuel would go right back down, and that's not good. So what we originally thought was a leaking injector, because we also noticed that the car was slow. So we're comparing my time slip from the time when I ran a 14.28, and there's no way around it. After the 60 foot, the car is just slower. At every metric, right? The 330, the 8th, every point of measurement, the car is slower. So we're thinking leaking injector, yada yada yada, call it for the night, we go home. And so the next day I chose to do the simplest stuff first, right? This is the diagnostic approach. You do the stuff that's free and you do the stuff that's easy. So I tear open the trunk, which is probably easier than taking apart the fuel rail. Take apart the trunk, open up the fuel system. So when I first got this car, I had fuel pressure issues. I obviously didn't have the gauge, right? I'm going to a mechanic and they're telling me this. So I replaced the fuel pump and the fuel filter. But at the time, I don't know why, it seems like parts have just become easier to get. But back then, when I first got this car 3-4 years ago, parts are impossible to find. So I put a Maxima fuel filter, which is similar height but skinnier. And the problem is on the fuel filter is, you know, let's say it's this tall. Well, there's a little rubber piece on either end of it that connects it to the the pump, and the pump sits in a bracket. So the whole thing has to kind of push out against the top and the bottom, and that's what holds it all into place. And you use hose clamps to secure it. So anyways, when I had done this, everything was fine, but because the fuel filter is shorter and skinnier, it wasn't pressing down on the top and bottom. So there's a little rubber seal that actually seals in the bracket, seals in the pump to the bracket, and that also serves the function of it pushes up against a release valve. I don't know if it's a pressure release, or I'm not sure what the function is, but if it's not covered, the fuel pump, once it stops pumping, the fuel just pushes right back out into the tank, and that's what had happened. The seal had just become a little bit dislodged. Well, anyways, I've been acquiring parts of this for the last 3 years. I had a fuel filter sitting on the table. So I put in a new fuel filter, and I also took the sock. There's a little sock that sits over the fuel pump, and that way it's mostly for larger debris, but it was clogged. Like, it was like full of black stuff. I took that off, scraped out as much stuff as I could, brake cleaned out, you know, multiple times. There was a lot of crap in this thing. I probably should replace the fuel pump too, but so anyways, put it all back together, turn on the ignition, fuel pressure holds now, fire it up, feels way better driving around. But now, so I still got the Firehawks on it, right? So I'm getting P1720 and I'm getting P1320, and I'm also getting kind of a lumpy idle. And there's some other drivability stuff too, like really hard 1-2 shifts at low coast. I don't know if I mentioned in the last video, but I'd put LubeGuard Platinum. So if you're going to use a transmission additive, use LubeGuard Red. That is really the only thing I would suggest putting in. I would go with LubeGuard Red. You really can't go wrong. But the Platinum is basically red plus a friction modifier. Now that stuff is for when your transmission dumps all its fluid out and you're on the side of the road and you can't get anything but Dexron or some no-name ATF. Well, you could mix no-name ATF and LubeGuard Platinum and get something similar to an Amatic S or an OEM fluid. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm mixing this with OEM fluid, and it basically makes the shifts very hard. And that was a mistake, which I also remedied. So I took out 5 liters of fluid. The total capacity is 11, so I probably should do another drain and fill at some point. But the transmission's feeling a lot better now. But the point is, so the TCM, I don't know if this is 100% for sure, but I'm fairly certain that the TCM uses wheel speed sensor for shift points, for stuff like that, because it would bounce limiter. I would shift it around 5,000 RPM and it would still snag limiter for a half second going into second, right? Whereas before I would shift at like 63, like almost about to hit limiter, I'd shift and it would bang into second. And then the same thing with third, right? There's a couple of videos where I actually mentioned on video, like you can actually see the camera move off axis. That's how hard it shifts. Oh yeah, that's a good shift. Come on, let's go. Which is exactly what you want for drag racing. So anyways, so now that I fixed the fuel, now that I understand the wheels, right, I'm putting all this together in my mind, but I'm still stuck on this coil pack issue, right? So it still has a P1320. So I go down the rabbit hole. I'm reading about BMW. I'm reading about Lotus guys who use these coil packs. And what they found was that the original, so Denso is the OE equipment, they're the original equipment manufacturer. So most equipment manufacturers release revisions of their hardware. But on this one, it's actually Bosch. So Bosch made a revision of the R8 coil. I'll post some pictures up on the top. I don't feel like taking these things out. Oh, great. Really, man? I'm trying to do a video. I'm just gonna yell, fuck them. So, anyways, Bosch, actually I'm gonna go sit in the car. That's so annoying. Okay. There we go. Stop to hear you. Perfect. So, anyways, so Bosch made a revision of these coils, and it doesn't have a metal, well, it might have a metal body, but there's a rubber like housing over it with a little metal tip. And all of these guys who are having very similar issues as mine, right, breaking up, random coil pack arcing, stuff like that, they found that taking the metal body off the coil pack would help tremendously, and that there is a plastic body that meets a rubber seal, and sometimes the spark can arc out of there. So I take the coil packs out, take the metal body off, I put some dielectric grease around the seam, I slap them back in, no more P1320, car feels way better, way more torque under load. I thought I had fixed it, right? But then I would be driving and I would feel a slight stumble at idle. And the longer it would go, the worse it would get. So my mind is totally wrapped around coil packs. I'm not thinking about anything else. So I take the coil packs out again. I'm inspecting each plug, right? Sometimes the ceramic can make a hairline crack and the spark can jump out that way. And under load, usually that would show its face, but there's a handful of people that said, yeah, I had, drivability was fine, but at idle, the coil pack would arc and I would get this stumble. So in my mind, it's definitely coil pack. Take them all out. I put RTV around them, right? So I've got silicone around the seams. I'm putting dielectric grease in the middle. And again, it's a little bit better than before because the grease that was holding the coil pack enclosed basically would get displaced from the heat. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, it just needs to be permanently sealed. So I sealed them up with RTV, slap them back in. Car runs awesome, super strong. I'm getting like 16, 17 miles per gallon city, which is insane. But the idle is still lumpy. I'm sitting on a line, I can feel like a boom, 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 boom. It's just kind of like popping, and honestly, you wouldn't even hear this, but I can feel it in the pedal, and I can feel the car shaking. Right, you open the hood, and the hood kind of shakes. These are not good signs. Right? The VK is a very, very smooth running motor when it's running properly. So, anyways, fast forward. I'm watching Scanner Danner videos. If you haven't watched Scanner Danner, you have to subscribe. He'll teach you how to think diagnostically. Really, really amazing guy, and honestly, he actually has videos on the Q45. When I first got this car, it had a intermittent coil. It had an intermittent crank sensor, like we all have, and I didn't know that. And he had a video on this and taught me basically what the difference is of a Hall effect sensor and pull down versus pull up. And I used that video when I first got the car to diagnose it. And then fast forward 3 years, I'm watching like all of this guy's videos because they're all, applicable to some degree. Anyways, enough of the rant. I'll tell you why the idle wasn't working. And it's very funny because it has nothing to do with coil packs, and I absolutely should know this because I've already fixed it once. So after the crank sensor went, and I put the ECU in the car, and I was going down that rabbit hole when I was still a newbie, this vacuum line to the brake booster had a little crack in it. And when the car was cold, this was stiff. And when the car would warm up, this was not so stiff, and it would open up the hole, creating a vacuum leak. Well, this line hasn't failed, but my stupid catch can, let me just switch to the good sensor here. My stupid catch can O-rings had failed, as well as, can I see it? This PCV line right here. So this had a bunch of cracks in it, which I had already known about and just forgotten, just put it off. But that PCV had a small crack in it, and our O-rings were leaking. So that's why I'm at Canadian Tire to buy some new O-rings, because these are already looking pretty beat. Not looking too sharp. But that's actually my fault because I mounted the catch can on the block, so it eats O-rings like crazy because I'm stupid and I didn't just tap somewhere on the engine bay. But I just wanted to make a quick video because I know somebody is out there facing some idle issue, some weird issue, and yeah, this one's for you guys because I'm an idiot, and if it happened to me, well, it probably won't happen here because you're probably smarter than me. But anyways, if you guys are having any sort of breaking up issues, if you're having fueling issues, go through the car. It's not hard. The fuel tank is literally just taking the interior trim out. It's like a handful of clips. You need a flathead screwdriver.
Flashback.
Okay, so I just wanted to show a little trick here. I'm gonna get these fuel lines off, and I don't have the quick connect tool for that. So you take a little bit of fuel line and cut it down like that. You just put it around here. Around the edges. Oh, I don't know if I can do this with one hand. There. Oh, and fuel's everywhere. Works great.
End of flashback.
And that's it. The actual the actual screws on the fuel tank lid are a 6mm. Don't use the screwdriver to open them. They're very, very soft. Very, very soft. I actually stripped them the first time I did this when I first got the car. But go through the fuel system, check your fuel filter. They're supposed to be done every 2 years on this car, or every 30,000 miles. And that will pick up a ton of fuel economy as well. So I just wanted to make a quick video. I know this is kind of all over the place, but check your fuel pump, check your fuel tank, check your fuel filter, check your plugs, check your coils. Don't live with a choppy car because it's just not worth it. These things are awesome when they run properly. I'm just kind of ranting now, but anyways, I don't know what this will be in, but I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.